Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Well, another big week to get through. We're going to try and cover all that macro news, which continues to intertwine with the crypto news these days. So I'm trying to get into a bit of a routine again for you guys after a bit of a hiatus. Cracking video with Martin on Friday, but as you know, YouTube doesn't like to suggest our videos anymore since we made our content ad-free. So I do ask you to share that around, give it a like, leave a comment. All those things do help the algorithm, and it prevents us from having to do those ads. So, guys, a few upgrades again to the member platform. We're going to continue to work with our premium members to get feedback about not only what sort of content you want, but the layout of the platform and what features you want. So we're continually tweaking that with our big team over in Melbourne. And don't forget the Knowledge Center. That's all free over on the website as well. Collective Shift. Head over there. So many people are piling into crypto, and I continue to drill those lessons and the basics and all my investing rules. My cheat sheet checklist before you invest in any altcoin, all that sort of thing, guys. So many people have just learned those lessons the hard way the past couple of weeks, and now wishing that they maybe had stuck to the basics. All right, let's get into the local macro news, and some amazing headlines starting to come out, or everywhere, but particularly Australia. So we know that millennials are less interested in property. We're starting to get some stats like the percent of them that are now invested in even crypto, for example, and just not as interested in property, as well as all the boomers that are set to retire. So demographics are going to play out in all markets around the world, but maybe property, particularly in Australia. Now, these lockdowns are continuing to hit businesses. You know, I've got plenty of friends over in Melbourne that are feeling the pinch, and I know it sucks, this back and forth. And as I kind of said, well, from the start, I guess my message was of one of concern initially because of what we were seeing. But I said once we have enough data around that, then we can make an informed decision. And I guess my message is now that we should not be going into these complete lockdowns and killing businesses, the mental health side of things. Yes, all of that now, the data is showing us that we need to be having a different conversation. It doesn't make sense to be going into these complete lockdowns and killing the economy and hurting everyone in other ways. If everyone is doing the right thing, we can definitely keep it contained, and there's no reason to, I guess, fear as much as we were initially. Anyway, superannuation. Now, these rises that are coming into effect, it's all well and good, these ideas on paper, like always, isn't it? When they go through and politicians vote them in or whatnot. But then the reality sets in where, well, who's going to pay for it? And is it the small business owner? Like, where does he have an extra couple of percent, for example, in his margins to pay that extra amount for the super? So is he going to come out of the worker's hip pocket? Full circle, another great idea that politicians or whoever comes up with. Who's that really benefiting? Getting more money once again, going into the investing world, intangible assets, Wall Street. These guys that are sitting at computers and pressing buttons. None of this is of benefit to the real economy or things that we need to be focusing on and investing in. Land tax plan to hit house prices. Look, maybe, I'm sure there'll be loopholes or ways around it, because property is just on fire at the moment. Like, nothing is going to make this go down unless they make some radical changes. And those sort of things are just never going to get through because of who's making those decisions. That, people with investment properties and money come into their pocket from all the sources that are benefiting, as we've discussed many times. But record prices just about everywhere. Martin and I spoke about this in more detail, so I won't talk about it too much, but interest rates have begun to creep up just a little bit in some types of loans, and that. Check out the episode with Martin if you haven't already, because we discussed all that in a lot more detail. Now, ASIC have issued this new advice for activist short sellers to curb these ambush tactics. So, of all the things that some of these regulators are focusing on, it's the short sellers. I mentioned this the other week in a video, or particularly in a member video recently, about how these guys have just been kicked to the curb, and there's none of them left. It's a dying breed, short selling markets, because not only have they gone up by so much, but everything has been against them. Even if they did all the right fundamental research, nothing matters anymore when everyone has got the markets back these days, apart from you that sees fair value as being lower. And so there's none of that market, I guess, stabilizing mechanism that short selling used to provide. But stocks in Australia, another, I guess, prediction I made was that if the RBA dropped rates to zero and started QE, it was the easiest trade of all time just to go long stocks. And looks at what's happened. Best year in a decade, record highs, blah blah blah. But none of that is a real reflection of what is going on for the average people in lots of parts of Australia. So this is where the central bank is starting to face pressure. Canada and New Zealand have sort of signalled this move away from these. Remember, these were emergency policies, whereas in Australia, our own backyard, just I think last week, Philip Lowe made this commitment of more QE, $200 billion or whatever it is, and moving the goalposts, all these things that should not be in place. If the economy, even things like borrowing rates, at one stage that conversation was around banks being scared to lend. And if you look at that data that we do in our monthly housing update, lending is going on at a record pace. So, the rhetoric is just so much different to reality. Again, Australian media is probably up there with the US in terms of the worst. But look, RBA might be flexible, but this is the problem we're going to get to in the US news section as well, is that the market are just going to be held hostage. A sharp sell-off, they're going to panic, and they don't realize that what they've done is irreversible. Even on paper, sure, they're all there with their degrees and their calculators saying that we can unwind this and we'll step up gradually. But the reality is that markets and powers that be make it far too hard, and they scare these regulators and decision makers, policy makers, into this corner. And Philip Lowe's shown that he has already caved to what the market and the media kind of want and called for, and what's happening globally. And so I don't see there's any reason why he won't cave on any reversal or tapering, just like we've seen the Fed have to. So this is what they should be focusing on. These Crown money laundering investigations, getting worse. And every time we see any big corporation, a big bank in the US, Australia, these are the ones that are doing all the dirty work. It's not the cryptocurrency world or anything like that. That's where the focus should be on cleaning up the bad behaviour, the crime and whatnot. Now, Aussie wine industry's taken a bit of a hit with what's going on in the China tariffs. They're preparing to go to the World Trade Organization, but it's almost like going to the teacher and, dobbing on someone in school, and then the bully makes it twice as bad for you after school when you do that. So that's kind of this relationship where the World Trade Organization don't have any power to change anything with China. And look at the sort of the stance that they're taking. They're flexing. China's saying Australia's weak and would be the first hit in a war over Taiwan, basically warning them about, whatever they're going to be doing in terms of Navy patrols and the disputed waters, blah, blah, blah. Don't even think about it. Remember, Australia's just spent millions of dollars, hundreds of millions or billions on this military equipment, upgrading our armed forces, whatnot. It's all just a big show, isn't it? None of it's actually going to make any difference at the end of the day. At the same time, we've got the World Trade Organization talking about waiving the IP, so the intellectual property rights of these vaccines. So this is another ethical dilemma about should we scrap the protectionist measures that are put in place for these drug creators to have the rights reserved for that stream of property as the creators, versus, hold on, Big Pharma saying this is our profits, you can't do it that way, kind of stepping in because money runs the world. So what do you think about this? Is this an absolute no-brainer that they should overrule it, this temporary waiver for they call it intellectual property around these COVID vaccines? And another headline we had recently was, oh, look, a third dose is showing better results again. So Big Pharma are going to push to milk as much money out of this because they know that governments around the world are paying for it and picking up the tab in most ways, versus this idea of, hey, something so important that's possibly saving millions of lives, we need to get rid of those usual things we have in place to protect that. All right, so G7 leaders are pledging, again, 1 billion doses for low-income nations. Another big opportunity to go to the powers that be, those central banks that have the big printers, and say, hey, you guys pick up the tab. And it's all of a sudden, out of all the global disease, they've had an ethical change of heart, deciding that they want to help out billions of people around the world because those other governments are going to be picking up the tab, like I just said. Now, one thing you won't hear from some of these guys where Big Pharma runs the world, Israel is, I'd say, a more open country, very advanced in terms of their tech and whatnot. So you're going to hear, I guess, more open, transparent headlines from them. And yeah, they've done the study, they've found this link with myocarditis. So this is inflammation of the heart or heart valves. And this is one of the things that I said when pollies get up there and say, oh, this is 100% safe. It's simply not true. Even if it's 99% safe in reality, the long-term implications and side effects, or in certain populations, just hasn't been studied like other drugs that have been around for longer or gone through more clinical testing. So this is where they lose the little trust they had left with the general population, when more of these things are going to start to crop up in future, for example, and people just turn around and go, here you were pushing it on everyone, promising it was safe, and it just wasn't. And that's where we need to have these more open, honest conversations about, well, how else can we go about things, at least developing a plan B. All right, so India is one of the places that unfortunately is really, really struggling at the moment. But as usual, the answer is to print more money as growth falters, bond buying programs, this, that, or the other. This global reset, or whatever you want to call it, that's coming, in some ways I'm looking forward to it, because it's just the beating around the bush that we're doing and pretending that these other things are working. It's becoming a joke that more and more of you, for example, are understanding how this works, where before we had YouTube and these avenues to educate people had no idea that, you print more money, you sell more bonds, and you hope a central bank buys it, and this crazy thing. All that money is just going to the banks as reserves. None of it gets into the real economy, and then they speculate and it goes into Wall Street. People are going to start putting on yellow vests and making signs and saying, oh, this is an absolute joke. The way that the system works and we're being told is to our benefit, when it's really not the case at all. So Russia's rainy day fund is to get out of all US dollar assets. This move continues. One of my favorite or most important announcements that we're getting up to here is the retaliation from China, as Biden blocks 59 Chinese companies in this amended Trump order. And China's got this situation here where the yuan's actually strengthening a lot. Their bonds are starting to sell off as fears grow over liquidity, because they have actually started to tighten a little bit compared to a lot of other places. But this was the big shock move. So pushing on with these anti-sanction counterfeiting laws, basically, look, forget what anyone says or does against us. We really want to put measures in place to say that we're not respecting or going to abide by these tariffs, and the US acting as world police. So think about who that is going to open up the gates to do more and more business with. Russia, these struggling nations. I think we're going to see a real change of heart. it's all well and good for the US to sit there and play world police, but when all these countries are really starting to struggle and going to these recessions or maybe depressions, do you think they're really going to care about sanctions if China or Russia or someone on the banned list is offering them, food or oil or whatever it is? And that's where I think things are going to get very, very interesting, and the whole global trade dynamic is already changing. Now, if you look under the hood, we've got the number of cases of COVID really declining in the US. Before we've really had this huge rollout of the vaccine. I'd love to see the data around what that looks like region by region. But once again, this is egg on the face. We were wrong, but big tech controls the world and controls the narrative. So more people now are coming to terms with the fact that maybe this was man-made or came from a lab or blah, blah, blah. Whereas these things were conspiracy theories. Who knows where the YouTube algorithm is even at? Like saying those few words in a sentence could get this video banned, for example. Whereas now there's mainstream researchers out there talking about that sort of thing. And Facebook had to reverse their policies where usually you could, or recently up until now, you would have got your post taken down, maybe your account banned, all that type of thing, because you expressed an alternate view. So this is a glimpse into the future. But what it highlights, if you're only here for the macro part of the video and you don't watch the crypto news, this is exactly the framework of why we're building things like Ethereum and these other protocols for open information. Just like Bitcoin allows for the open flow of money around the world and other cryptocurrencies, banks, central banks and governments, payment providers, regulators, these guys are no longer the gatekeepers of moving money and payments and value around the world. Well, Facebook, big tech, again, governments, regulators and so on, are no longer the gatekeepers and have the power of what information can flow to where around the world. And that is just so powerful. I just can't wait until we have fully decentralized versions of all social media, let alone other news sites and whatnot. Not only good for the content creators, it allows for trust, or where did that news item first pop up on a blockchain? Things spread so fast these days, whether they're true or false, and blockchain is going to help us solve all those issues. Good, reliable sources can build reputation on chain and whatnot. So hey, I love all that stuff, and we're going to get to some news about that in the crypto section as well. Facebook hit with new antitrust probes, no surprise there, from UK and Europe. Lawmakers unveil this new bipartisan antitrust reforms that could reshape all the big tech giants, and this is from the US, not from the UK and Europe. We've got Amazon and The Age, The Guardian shut down by global website outage. So again, getting into the crypto news, I said at the start of the video, they're literally overlapping and intertwining more and more these days. So let's say we've got this Ethereum open internet and these decentralized platforms and news. The next step is what I call D-Web or Web3, where we're decentralizing the underlying infrastructure of that as well. And so we're not reliant on Amazon Web Services going down and all the websites that run on that go down as well. So we're going to have a decentralized Amazon Web Services. We already have these type of companies. That's one of the sectors I'm most bullish on and we're currently investing in for this reason. So every single layer of the internet, information, computers, games you're playing, from software to hardware, satellites out there relaying this information, it's all going to be decentralized, controlled, owned and governed by us, the users, instead of the powerful few at the top of corporations or governments. Biden, G7 leaders will endorse a global minimum corporate tax at least 15%. So once again, good luck, these powerful nations pushing this on other nations. Yes, I know it's only G7, but what does it do? Well, these other countries, like we've seen in El Salvador this week, jump up and down and say, hey guys, come here, bring your jobs, bring your money, bring your corporations. We won't force that upon you. So with all this happening, stock buybacks have hit record highs. I've been speaking about this a lot, how insiders are selling and they're using all this money that's being pumped in to literally issue new shares or buy back their own stock, sell their own stock from their own pockets, cash out while the going's good at record highs. Why not? And sure enough, the S&P has eked out another record high this week, third straight week of winning. Subprime auto loan delinquencies, they had been exploding, but they plunged after the stimmies went out. These folks are now on buyer's strike. So, up and down, a bit of the dead cat bounce as we see there. But this is all those temporary measures that we're now waiting to see what everything looks like when the dust settles. Now, if you think about the backdrop and all that, these measures were temporary and they helped, but a lot of things are not looking so good again. But the Fed are talking about, or getting Janet Yellen and other sock puppets to do the talking about talking for them, that they might be set to taper. Now, sneakily, a couple of these programs have started to, I guess, roll off or been undone to some extent. Calling it reverse repo, but this is only really undoing what's happened in the last few months. So nothing too dramatic. But if they're actually talking about tapering, that's when we are expecting a big tantrum from the market again. Surging inflation, no problem. This is the junk bond yields drop to record lows, dish out these negative real rates. And the Fed are really whacking investors here. So I think the S&P 500 yield is the lowest it's ever been, or in decades now. So the Fed, the Treasury account, as Janet Yellen promised, has been drained. She spent $700 billion so far, kind of offsetting these reverse repos. But all this is where it's going to get ugly, possibly for the dollar. So it's now lost its purchasing power at the fastest rate since 1982. Talk of it being, permanent. You can't possibly bounce back after printing so much money. It's all relative. It always depends what others do. But here you can see these are the love Lynn Alden. If you're not following her already, check out her content. But these are the real inflation-adjusted interest rates for cash equivalents. So -4 or 5% range. Now this is, to varying degrees for the past decade, she's saying. And this is why investors and people are being pushed into everywhere. And I've spoken about some of my wealthy friends that say they literally got too much money on the sidelines because they don't want to invest in stocks at record highs, properties overvalued, where bonds at the moment, not a good decision. You can't park in cash because you're losing so much in real terms. And so people are going, well, hey, crypto, it's a new thing. And now people are getting angry that people are throwing money at meme stocks or, dog-themed cryptocurrencies, for example, or altcoins. And this is all a result of monetary policy, whether they want to admit it or not. And Jerome Powell literally said this was going to happen in his 2012 minutes. You can go and see what he was saying about at these Fed meetings. And it's now happened, but they want to pretend like it's not there. So, look, oil's had a little bit of a pullback, but it's been near 2-year highs. That one's a little bit more, a bit of a different market compared to some of these other commodities that are, just skyrocketing, like lumber. Gold and silver have broken out. Beautiful looking charts there at the moment. We're finally getting some congressmen to call out this BS about how Fort Knox has never been audited, so putting the pressure on Janet Yellen. I fully expect that the gold is not there to the degree that the US promised it is. I reckon it's been lent out so much over the years, and the number of claims on each bar would be, who knows, anywhere from 3 or 4 to dozens or 100 or more claims on each bar. I'm not going to get into too much of those news items tonight, but I did want to show you a few charts just quickly. So this is the US dollar. Let's go to that weekly chart. We can see that it's had a little bit of a bounce, but it really did roll over after people were expecting that this was the bottom. So now we wait and see whether this can go higher, and it's more about what other economies are going to do. Is Canada, New Zealand, Australia going to join, for example, and others start to tighten, where the US is just going to have to keep printing and be forced to be the world's money printer. at a time when everyone's really struggling. All right, so let's head on over and get into the crypto news. Just a reminder, if you are joining us just for the crypto news, head over to Collective Shift, guys. All that free content on the Knowledge Center for beginners. The beginners course is all there. We've got the new beginners questions section. So a lot of feedback we got from our beginners were we want somewhere to ask dedicated questions. So look, if you're a beginner, you've got the help center, you've got the glossary, you've got the beginners course, and now you've got beginners questions. You can always ask a more in-depth question you want me to answer with more detail for our monthly Q&A that we have. Then you've got all our resources, and then you get into our our research and premium content, as well as the community there with thousands of you all buzzing. And it's kind of funny that a few people have literally commented that they're almost looking forward to a crypto winter if it comes, because that's when you do find the most gems. That's when all those coins that we've got now that are up 100x, you don't get them when there's a hype and a bubble. We got them when everyone thought crypto was dead. So look, I'll get into what I think about in terms of price action towards the end, but I don't know if we're about to head into crypto winter. So Google has lifted that ban. That just opens up another whole wave of advertising that's possible. Remember when no companies were allowed to advertise? And think about everyone that's going to want to get out there and get those fresh eyeballs. Chinese state media indicates that China is not banning crypto trading. Geez, every single year China ban crypto in some way or another. I know the mining crackdown is real at the moment, but I still think that probably been exaggerated. ECB talking about digital euro being needed to combat all these other artificial currencies, and this is the whole stablecoin debate: synthetic currencies, artificial, whatever they're going to call them. China have already said that they don't want to see any digital yuan or yuan stable coins, but they're already out there, so there's not a lot you can do. But again, watching how these guys are going to squirm when they realize that all this stuff is kind of out there already. So we do have the Fed pushing for that digital dollar, and look, the ECB and the Fed are just so far behind. Stablecoins are going to be at $1 trillion market cap before these guys launch anything meaningful. So hey, let them try at least. Standard Chartered venture arm is building an institutional crypto brokerage, so more and more of these big names getting in. But USDC has just gone from strength to strength. I think they are the biggest chance of actually just being adopted by the US as the official central bank digital currency or government coin, whatever you want to call that. I'm not sure what that looks like. But they've raised another 440 million in funding from some of these big backers, the centralized exchanges that are getting into bed with this. I don't want to say the best stable coin, but the one that they can probably trust the most in terms of knowing that it's backed dollar for dollar. Now, Bank of England are the latest one to call for stablecoins to need the same level of regulation as banks. Last week we heard from the US they want them as regulated as stocks or bonds or something. So this is all part of the big noise that's being made at the moment to scare people and try and crack down on crypto because it's been booming so much. Coinbase have had to change some of the fees around their trading coin pairs because they're just out there. The liquidity, the volumes, it's just crazy. The growth on DEXs now, Uniswap doing more volume than Coinbase, Curve and these kind of platforms that are becoming the new banks, the new Forex exchange markets. As I predicted, again, you don't need all these other fancy promises, okay? This is all going to be click of a button stuff from an app on your phone through DeFi to move any asset around the world from any person to any person, any currency, whatever it is. Kraken are rethinking their plans to list after Coinbase has had a bit of a lackluster performance. And again, do you want to cozy up too much to Wall Street versus really go the other way completely and show your favor and commitment to the cypherpunks, the degens, the crypto world? So UK bank Starling bans crypto exchange deposits due to this suspected financial crime. We then hear shortly after that they're going to lift this crypto ban. on June 23. It's all about the customers and pushback, but it just shows, I think, that there's no certainty. There still needs to be more regulatory clarity for some of these banks and players around the world. But people also are going to vote with their feet. Get up and leave if your bank keeps banning you or says they're going to ban crypto deposits. Ripple have got their first real-time payments from Oman to India using the blockchain. Now, I haven't looked at this in too much detail, but if it says using blockchain, Ripple don't use a blockchain. They use their own ledger. So I will read more about that one, but I'm always interested to see if these things actually use XRP data, even if they're using XRP's ledger, or I'm not sure if they're just referring to RippleNet as a blockchain here or whatnot. But until we see a lot of XRP volume and use and actually holding, that's when I'd be more inclined to change my opinion around Ripple. All right, so robo-advisor app Makara launches with SEC approval. 20,000 users signed up already. Awesome to see. More and more apps and traditional investing platforms adding crypto. Interactive brokers is a huge one. Adding it at the end of US summer, so next couple of months, which is great. But this is a huge news item that added to the pile of negatives this week. So Silvergate Bank to discontinue Binance USD deposits and withdrawals. They're working hard to find a different solution, but think about this. This is all regulators can do, isn't it? Control the on-ramps and off-ramps. And at that point, if they were to crack down on all those off-ramps, decentralization becomes even more important. And that's where we get to the point where the local Bitcoins of the world, we can have privacy layers. Where there's a will, there's a way, and it creates these black or grey markets that only create price premiums. It gives you incentive for people to create products that work around these problems. I just love where the space is at. I know people hate it when price goes down, but I love the innovation and the problems that are going to be solved and what is going to come from the more that regulators push back, the faster and the better the problems solve, and the better the innovators. They all work on something that's holding the space back together in terms of its importance. So it's all part of the story, guys, of this wonderful novel that we're all in at the moment in real time. So Binance owned WazirX have been investigated for AML. Maybe they're being picked on a little bit at the moment. Binance Smart Chain, I will say, has had an enormous amount of exploits and flash loan attacks, bugs and whatnot at the moment. So some projects are kind of reconsidering whether or not they are going to be building some of these leading DeFi projects like Impossible Finance. But a lot of the volume has gone there, and some people, for them, it was a game changer. They literally couldn't pay $100 to buy or swap some tokens on Ethereum, and so full credit to Binance Smart Chain for making it more accessible for those people for a time. Into the NFT news. So the big boys with deep pockets, Mike Novogratz and Gary Vaynerchuk, making a move here. We saw Top Shots lead the way, so now you're going to be seeing baseball get into it here with their deals. Look, Thailand are banning memes and fan-based tokens from digital exchanges. But NFT sales are down 90%. So that was something that was a bubble in terms of, those basically valueless things that were being overly hyped. But now it's time to say, well, hold on, what's real? How can we actually give value to people, bring them closer with the content creators and that type of thing? And there's been some big money invested in this space in particular. So Mythical Games is another one that's raised 75 million. You've got Activision and EA Sports, Oculus on board. It's awesome to see what is going to come from this. So a little bit like, remember we had the DeFi winter? And once again, we were saying, guys, this is the time to be buying a lot of these projects. DeFi is not dead. And then we had the huge run up. So when I see these stats like NFTs down 90%, But the good projects, like Red Fox Labs, continue to have these partnerships and whatnot with marvelous NFTs here. They're the ones that are going to boom whenever that next wave is. Ecomi. It's funny because I remember this conversation literally saying to Dan, "Oh, why aren't you on Ethereum?" And they're on another blockchain at the time, and they're saying, "Well, we needed something fast and whatnot." And I literally, I think I made this introduction to them, saying, "Have you heard about immutable? These layer twos on Ethereum are only a few weeks away or months away, and a lot of these projects are now coming back to these layer twos. So yeah, I know some projects are leaving and other layer one protocols, which we're about to get into, are doing an awesome job. It's creating competition. There's so much money being thrown around, 450 mil for Solana. Shopify for NFTs launches on Solana as well. Metaplex Marketplace. Arrington Capital, 100 million fund for Algorand. What else have we got here? So everyone knows Exodus, the wallet. They've done a 75 million tokenization of their company stock on Algorand. Kasama, I always say Kasuma. Kasama parachain auctions have begun, or they are going to, along with Polkadot. So June 15th is that date. So one of the narratives that we've been expecting in the group, and we've covered this in our research reports, a lot of demand should come from good projects for these tokens if they are successful for these parachains. Kraken, for example, here, they've launched an auction platform, and this is one of the few tokens that's defied the downtrend, which is awesome to see. Master Ventures launches a $30 million Polkadot and Kasama ecosystem fund. So look at the money that's just being thrown around here. Stake Technologies, $10 million to build ecosystem on Polkadot and Kasama. So all these different projects are, developing on these other chains as well. Whether or not directly or indirectly having their cross-chain bridge, that's another story here. Cardano with a link to Nervos network here as well. OKCoin integrating with Polygon. So this was the first centralized exchange to integrate Polygon. I actually think that we're going to see a bit of a resurgence from Amisa Go. So OMG have got OMG X now as well. I'm going to do a big write-up on all of this for members very soon, but I won't say too much more there. Polygon, $21 million from AU21 Capital. How big are these headlines and the hundreds of millions I've just described for these other protocols? It's so exciting to see, and that is why I do not think that we are heading into a bear market at all. Olga, latest prediction market to launch sports betting using Polygon as well. Definity, so this is the internet computer, will integrate with Ethereum. So he's made I guess a little bit of a name for themselves as being a competitor, but once again, it's all about integration and cross-chain these days rather than saying that you're an Ethereum killer. They've responded to these decentralization and privacy concerns, as always. When you say that you're so much better than anything else, it's normally, well, what are the trade-offs? Be honest, and these are the conversations that people are now thankfully asking. Curve Finance have released their new positions for their AMM takeover. So their latest upgrade is very similar to Uniswap. It's all about capital efficiency, and theirs is a lot more automated, and they're adding some new pools and pairs and whatnot. So competition is heating up. Remember when Sushi challenged Uniswap, and now we've got things like Curve as well. A lot of people aren't happy with the new version 3 of Uniswap, so it's just, I love seeing all this. ArcX Sapphire version 3. So this is on-chain identity. These are DeFi passports. How you're going to build up a credit score and trust reliability without actually having to give away your name. It's just your Ethereum address that you can start to build this reputation. So when you go to a DeFi bank, maybe you've got a lower collateralization ratio for the loan you want to take out, or they trust you more to borrow against some of your other assets. You'll get better and longer loan terms, and this is all coming with these DeFi passports. Aragon have introduced Adoni. So this is another decentralized governance platform for traditional organizations. So starting to on-ramp a lot of the decision-making from the traditional world. One of my favorite projects as well, Aragon. Uniswap community votes on this $40 million DeFi proposal for organization for lobbying. Okay, so at the moment we're seeing regulators crack down on DeFi, but Harvard actually voted this. They almost voted this in themselves. So they've got a lot of Uniswap tokens. They've got a lot of money. You put forward a proposal, and if you're the one that mainly votes on it, this got passed. So this actually, I guess, maybe rubbed a few people up the wrong way because Harvard, someone that's got a heap of money, just got $40 million from a DeFi protocol. But if that does mean that they successfully lobby and get better laws for DeFi, is that a good thing? I'm not really sure. These are the decisions we've got to make, and it probably highlights the problems we still have with DAOs and on-chain governance at the moment, because these things can still happen. Now, getting into the Bitcoin news, Taproot was locked in. So this is one of those technologies that I did a video about 2 or 3 years ago, thinking it was a bit closer, but it does allow for some privacy things, some upgrading for smart contracts as well. But it's now locked in and confirmed for deployment. So we got a bit of a pump briefly on this news, but I do think this is really significant. And if we had more of a positive news cycle, spinning this up that Bitcoin was having its first major upgrade in years, then it's funny to say, but you get where I'm going with this. The herd do what they're told. The media creates sentiment. That's why my message is to people, cut out the noise, because sentiment controls the markets. Too many people are trading on emotions. Now, I do love that Bitcoin does have its first upgrade in years coming. I love that it was starting to get DeFi there. But I don't like people like Pomp that have these disingenuous claims. They're still pushing this message that everything that's happening on Ethereum is happening on DeFi, and it's all going to come to Bitcoin. That's complete BS, and really frustrates me. But I'm a huge fan of Sovereign. As you can see there, they follow me, and I had a great conversation with them the other day saying that I'd love to have you guys on the channel. I'll be a big supporter of what you're doing. But Maxi's come out there and bash wrapped Bitcoin, saying it doesn't count, it's on a sidechain and blah, blah, blah. Well, Sovereign is using the Rootstock sidechain to wrap their Bitcoin effectively. It's our Bitcoin on a sidechain. So you can't have it both ways. They changed this total value lock metric to count the sovereign tokens, and most of the sovereign tokens are locked or staked on their own platform website. And so all of a sudden, overnight, they jumped to $2 billion as their total value lock metric. And then Maxi start talking about how it's the number one project, blah, blah, blah. And again, just these vanity metrics, it just doesn't do anyone any favors. Some of these people that have, got into crypto late, bought fake followers on Twitter and that, it really grinds my gears that they have such a big following and influence. And they should not be telling people, all through crypto winter that Ethereum is dead, for example. All those people that listen to that miss the opportunity for DeFi and NFTs in gaming. And now they're pushing this message that, once again, it's all going to be happening on Bitcoin. And anyway, that's my rant. On to the big news. So El Salvador passed this bill, but straight away we've got issues from people like the IMF saying that it brings into question everything, macroeconomic, financial and legal issues. So mining, energy usage, this is another one. I'm kind of glad that Elon's going to have no role in the Bitcoin Mining Council that's going to get established. We probably don't want him on our team with his track record with regulators. But just have a look at this list. So overnight, as soon as we had this news, almost all these things have just been ramped up by politicians. We know who pay the politicians and who get them out there, the sock puppets, to do their dirty work and talking for them. So all of a sudden, pushing misinformation about how much energy it uses, and it's dirty energy and it's causing global warming now. There's another article out of Denmark saying that the crypto market is definitely going to crash, and it's going to be so big it could even affect other markets. So for that reason, we should ban crypto. Elizabeth Warren saying that cryptos don't have any use case. We had, I think it was the Volcano Society saying that they're concerned about if El Salvador is going to use that volcano and the geothermal energy to mine Bitcoin. They're concerned about the effect that this could have on volcanoes around the world. I mean, this is the level of absolute insanity that's being pushed, blaming Bitcoin for all this ransomware, saying we need to ban Bitcoin because it's being used in ransomware. Every year it's used by criminals as a threat to the financial system. So we've all been saying it, expect this fear-mongering. It's never been more important for you to educate people and tell them, show them the data, show them the fact that Bitcoin gets most of its energy from renewables. Just one by one we can debunk all these, and we're going to have to keep doing it, so get used to it. Here's another one. Apparently crypto is now responsible for rising unemployment. People aren't getting jobs because they're trading crypto, according to Career Builder CEO. So just when you think you've heard it all and they're not going to get stupider, expect everything to be thrown at us because crypto is finally starting to go mainstream. New York's stand against Bitcoin mining has passed the Senate. These battles aren't over, but we do have people fighting on the other side. Square investing $5 million to build more solar facilities. Here we have Biden blaming for that ransomware that I was talking about, and this message that somehow the FBI were able to crack the private key of the hackers and whatnot, or just crack private keys in general. The level of misinformation is at all-time highs. But as I've said, guys, so much of this news cycle is US focused. None of that matters when these other countries, who's going to be next after El Salvador. There's just so many people that we can now expect to join the party. Populations of billions more than the US, with nothing to lose. That's that hashtag that I want to get it caught on, because I want people to hear that message and for it to resonate that US doesn't matter, these governments don't matter. It's the people with nothing to lose and everything to gain from this that need it the most that are going to cause the biggest wave of adoption and increase in price and value of Bitcoin and crypto. So this weekly chart, our momentum indicators have come from the highs. They're finally getting ready to start to curl up by the look of things. Some really positive moves here. I do think we're kind of at this point a little bit, I think it was like here where we had these pullbacks, these corrections, and a lot of people are expecting one more leg lower. It really feels like that. One more leg lower and we'll all buy. And whenever that's been the case in the past, we don't get that one more leg lower. So just zooming in a little bit here, maybe a bit of a head and shoulders here, a cup and handle. But I really think this whole crypto winter, the language of everyone, it's almost like this consensus view that the bull market's over. When look at all those headlines I've just reeled off and the money being thrown around. We knew we'd gone too far too fast. Everyone was calling for some sort of pullback or correction to the mean because things had gone crazy. Here we are. We've only really pulled right back to basically trend lines that you can draw and say, well, this is a more reasonable uptrend, or hey, we hit that 21 week MA on the weekly chart that we've done every cycle. However you want to draw it or call it or commentate it, this is all still very, very reasonable stuff. I think altcoins have held up far better than people are kind of making it out. A lot of these that haven't run yet, things like XRP, start to look at these ratios. Recently we got the news, things like EOS are putting together a bit of a DeFi fund, and so this is where I think their opportunity now, where maybe they are going to have pretty decent bounces and finally start to play catch up, because a lot of them haven't made new highs yet. So yeah, Bitcoin dominance, it's putting that higher low now. Hey, can Bitcoin go up? I do think that when Bitcoin gets to that 100,000, 200,000 mark, it's going to increase its dominance. For me, this dominance metric depends on if we start to count like NFTs and tokenizing all assets in the market cap of crypto. But I do think that we can still have enormous growth in good quality alt projects while Bitcoin dominance is going up and the price is going up. It doesn't have to be a tit for tat sort of market. So overall, that total market cap expected to continue to go up and to the right. Even total 2, the market cap of all altcoins doesn't look too bad. So guys, hey, maybe I'm too much of a permeable. A lot of you guys were telling me I was too bearish when I was telling you all through this period here that it's rosy, take profits. People are going to wish that they sold at these prices when alts correct, 50, 60, 70%, some of them down 90%. So a lot of you may be starting to understand why I was being a bit of the lone bear or cautionary through here. And that's why I'm quite happy to maybe be a little bit against the grain and be more bullish than a lot of people through here. So guys, all the best. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. A bit of a long one again. Head over, check out our members site, and I will talk to you again soon. Cheers.